Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're putting on our consultant's hats. We are going to solve a business problem that looks deceptively simple, but it's actually designed to catch you out. It's a classic case, and we are going to crack it wide open. And that quote from Mark Cosentino's legendary book, Case in Point, is exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to use his framework to solve a problem called the snow job. But this isn't just some academic exercise. This is a masterclass in the kind of structured thinking that solves real-world, high-stakes business challenges. All right, so here's the deal. Our client, Snow Shovels Inc., is facing a big gamble. They have to place one single order for the entire winter, months in advance, with no clue what the weather's going to be. So they ask us a simple question: how many shovels should we order? But here's the thing, and it's maybe the first rule of consulting. The client's first question is almost never the real problem you need to solve. So, what's our game plan? Here's the roadmap. First, we'll figure out what the client is really trying to do. Then, we're going to walk right into a very common trap, and I'll show you exactly how to avoid it. After that, we'll build a rock-solid framework, run the numbers, and deliver a final recommendation that goes way beyond just a simple number. Okay, let's get into it. Before we even think about touching a calculator, we have to do what every good consultant does: figure out what Snow Shovels Inc. truly wants to achieve. So you start asking some questions, right? And what you find out is they don't just want a number. Their main goal is to maximize their profit. But just as important, they have some serious constraints. They want the lowest amount of risk possible, and they absolutely hate having unsold inventory sitting in a warehouse. This little detail, it changes the entire problem. Okay, so now that we know what they really want, let's talk about the trap. This is the answer that seems so obvious, so logical, that the case author says almost everyone falls for it. So here's the data we have to work with. There's a 40% chance of a cold winter, where they'd sell 3,000 shovels, and a 60% chance of a mild winter, where they'd only sell 1,000. Now, what does your brain immediately want to do here? It wants to find a middle ground, right? You calculate a weighted average. You take 40% of 3,000, that's 1,200, and you add 60% of 1,000, which is 600. And boom, you get 1,800. It feels right, doesn't it? It feels balanced, safe. Well, let me tell you, this is the trap. It is fundamentally the wrong way to look at this problem, and it's the answer nearly everyone gives. And here is the giant hidden flaw. 1,800 is an average of sales. But did the client ask us to average sales? No, they asked us to maximize profit. This number totally ignores the financial pain of every single shovel they buy but don't sell. It goes completely against what they told us about hating risk and leftover inventory. So, how do you avoid that trap? You don't guess. You don't use intuition. You use a system. You need a rigorous, structured way of thinking, and that's what separates the pros from the amateurs. And the cornerstone of that system is this little acronym, MECE. MECE. It stands for Mutually Exclusive, Collectively Exhaustive. It might sound like fancy consultant speak, but it's an incredibly powerful idea. It just means you break a problem down into pieces that don't overlap, and you make sure you've covered all the possibilities. It's how you make your logic bulletproof. So our MECE approach gives us this clean 4-step plan. We've already nailed step 1. We clarified the real objective is profit. Next, we list out our key variables. Then, and this is the most important part, we're going to analyze the expected profit of each choice. This is the only way we get to the right answer.
All right, now we get to the fun part. This is the core of the analysis. It's time to build out our financial scenarios and actually run the numbers, but the right way, focusing on profit.
Okay, let's get our facts straight. Here's everything we know. We have our 2 weather scenarios with their probabilities. We know the demand for each. And here's the really crucial stuff. They cost $10 a shovel, and they sell for $20. So keep this in mind. You make $10 on a sale, you lose $10 on an unsold one. It's perfectly symmetrical. So let's look at our first option. What if we just order 1,000 shovels? The safe bet. Well, think about it. If we do this, we are guaranteed to sell every single one, whether it's a cold winter or a mild one. We make $10 profit on each, so that's a guaranteed $10,000 profit. Zero risk, zero leftover shovels. This option checks all the client's boxes. Now for the go big or go home option, ordering 3,000. Sure, if it's a cold winter, you're a hero. $30,000 in profit. But what happens if it's mild? Oh, that's where it hurts. You sell 1,000, making 10 grand, but you're sitting on 2,000 unsold shovels that cost you 10 bucks each. That's a $20,000 hole. You actually lose 10 grand. When you weigh the probabilities, your total expected profit craters to just $6,000.
And now let's go back and stress test that so-called intuitive answer of 1,800. In a cold winter, yeah, you sell them all, you make 18 grand, not bad. But in a mild winter, you sell 1,000, but you're stuck with 800 shovels. That's an $8,000 loss on inventory right there. Your net profit is just 2 grand. The final expected profit? $8,400. Better than the big gamble, but nowhere near the 10 grand from the safe bet.
And when you put it all on a chart like this, the answer just screams at you. It's not even close. Ordering 1,000 shovels isn't just the safest option, it delivers the highest expected profit of $10,000. That intuitive answer of $1,800, it leaves $1,600 of profit on the table and breaks the client's biggest rule. So we have our number, 1,000. And a lot of people would stop right there. They'd say, here's your answer, send the invoice. But that's the difference between being a number cruncher and a real strategic partner. The number is just the beginning.
So, bottom line, here's our primary recommendation. Order 1,000 shovels. Why? Because the data shows it gives you the highest possible expected profit while completely eliminating inventory risk. It checks every single box the client gave us.
But this is where you really add value. You say, look, we solved this year's problem, now let's make sure you never have this problem again. And you start throwing out ideas. Could you hedge your risk with things like weather derivatives? Could you go back to your supplier and negotiate a buyback clause for unsold stock? You're only in one town. What if you expanded to other places to smooth out the risk? These are the game-changing ideas.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. What are the big lessons here? How can you take this kind of thinking and apply it to your own problems?
First, always dig for the real objective. It's almost never the first thing you're told. Second, be super suspicious of simple averages. They almost always hide risk. Third, structure, structure, structure. Use a framework before you start calculating. And finally, always, always look for a way to go beyond just the answer and provide real strategic value.
Look, this case shows you how to find the best possible answer with the cards you're dealt. But the ultimate goal, the highest level of consulting, isn't just to play the game better. It's to help your client change the rules of the game itself so they don't have to be in this position next year. And that's the real work.